This is meant today to prepare us for the week that's called Holy Week, but it's also, Holy Week is meant to be the last time of preparation, as Lent has been, for the glorious celebration of the resurrection that we call Easter. That's why we end with the death today. And that's what we take from here today, is Jesus' crucifixion and his death. We need to go there. We need to be there. We need to remember that and think on it all week. For the resurrection can't happen without the death. So that's what the service is today. Let's begin now with the story of Palm Sunday.
After he had said this, he went on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. When he had come near Bethphage and Bethany, at the place called Mount of Olives, he sent two of the disciples, saying, "Go into the village ahead of you, and as you enter it, you will find there a colt that had never been ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you, 'Why are you untying it?' just say this, 'The Lord needs it.'" So those who were sent departed and found it as he had told them. As they were untying the colt, its owners asked them, "Why are you untying the colt?" They said, "The Lord needs it." Then they brought it to Jesus, and after throwing their cloaks on the colt, they set Jesus on it. As he rode along, people kept spreading their cloaks on the road. As he was now approaching the path down from the Mount of Olives, the whole multitude of disciples began to praise God joyfully with a loud voice for all the deeds of power that they had seen, saying, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest heaven." Some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, order your disciples to stop." He answered, "I tell you, if these were silent, the stones would shout out."
And now we will begin our journey to the tomb by using the traditional words that Scripture has witnessed to for centuries now. It is good, it shall always be good for the church in every time and place to remember this story, for many of those who lived through it contributed to its telling. Remember this story, for it has so many parts which would be very convenient not to remember, but which we must. It was the same night on which he was betrayed that Jesus sat at table for the last time with his disciples. Our myths have decided to call that the Last Supper. And yet he had supped with them, and then he invited them to go out with him to the garden that we call Gethsemane to pray. We read now the story of the rest of that evening and the next days from the Gospel of Matthew. Then Jesus said to them, "You will all become deserters because of me this night, for it is written, 'I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered.' But after I am raised up, I will go ahead of you to Galilee." Peter said to Jesus, "Though all become deserters because of you, I will never desert you." Jesus said to Peter, "Truly I tell you, this very night, before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter said to Jesus, "Even though I must die with you, I will not deny you." And so said all the disciples. While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With Judas was a large crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "The one I will kiss is the man. Arrest him." At once Judas came up to Jesus and said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed Jesus. Jesus said to Judas, "Friend, do what you are here to do." Then they came and laid hands on Jesus and arrested him. At that hour, Jesus said to the crowds, "Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me as though I were a bandit? Day after day I sat in the temple teaching, and you did not arrest me. But all this has taken place so that the scriptures of the prophets may be fulfilled." Then all the disciples deserted him and fled. Now, Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard, and a servant girl came over to Peter and said, "You also were with Jesus the Galilean." But Peter denied it before all of them, saying, "I do not know what you are talking about." When Peter then went out to the porch, another servant girl saw him, and she said to the bystanders, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." Again, Peter denied it with an oath, "I do not know the man." After a little while, the bystanders came up and said to Peter, "Certainly you are also one of them, for your accent betrays you." Then Peter began to curse, and he swore an oath, "I do not know the man." At that moment, the cock crowed. Then Peter remembered what Jesus had said, "Before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times." And Peter went out and wept bitterly. The story goes on. Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, in whose house the scribes and the elders had gathered. Now the chief priests and the whole council were looking for false testimony against Jesus so that they might have him put to death. But they found none, though many false witnesses came forward. At least 2 came forward and said, "This fellow said, 'I am able to destroy the temple of God and build it in 3 days.'" The high priest stood up and said, "Have you no answer? What is it that they testify against you?" But Jesus was silent. Then the high priest said to Jesus, "I put you under oath before the living God. Tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." Jesus said to him, "You have said so. But I tell you, from now on you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, "He has blasphemed. Do we still need witnesses? You have now heard his blasphemy. What is your verdict?" They all answered, "He deserves death." Then they spat in his face and struck him, and some slapped him, saying, "Prophesy to us, you Messiah. Who is it that struck you?" When morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people conferred together against Jesus in order to bring about his death. They bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate, the governor. Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus said, "You say so." But when he was accused by the chief priests and elders, Jesus did not answer. Then Pilate said to him, "Do you not hear how many accusations they make against you?" But Jesus gave him no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor was greatly amazed. Now, at the festival, the governor was accustomed to release a prisoner for the crowd, anyone whom they wanted. At that time, they had a notorious prisoner called Jesus Barabbas. So after they had gathered, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to release for you, Jesus Barabbas or Jesus who is called the Messiah?" For Pilate realized that it was out of jealousy that they had handed Jesus over. While he was sitting on the judgment seat, Pilate's wife sent word to him, "Have nothing to do with that innocent man, for today I have suffered a great deal because of a dream about him." Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowds to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus killed. The governor again said to them, "Which of the two do you want me to release for you?" And they said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "Then what should I do with Jesus who is called the Messiah?" And all of them said, "Let him be crucified." Then Pilate asked, "Why? What evil has he done?" But even more they shouted all together, "Let him be crucified." So when Pilate saw that he could do nothing, but rather that a riot was beginning, he took some water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, "I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves." So he released Barabbas for them, and after flogging Jesus, he handed Jesus over to be crucified. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters, and they gathered the whole cohort around him. They stripped Jesus and put a scarlet robe on him, and after twisting some thorns into a crown, they put it on Jesus' head. They put a reed in his right hand and knelt before him and mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" They spat on him and took the reed and struck him on the head. After mocking him, they stripped him of the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him. As they went out, they came upon a man from Cyrene named Simon. They compelled this man to carry Jesus' cross. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull, they offered Jesus wine to drink mixed with gall, but when he tasted it, he would not drink it. And when they had crucified him, they divided his clothes among themselves by casting lots. Then they sat down there and kept watch over him. Over Jesus' head, they put the charge against him, which read, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." Then 2 bandits were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by derided Jesus, shaking their heads and saying, "You who would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross." In the same way, the chief priests also, along with the scribes and elders, were mocking Jesus, saying, "He saved others. He cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross now, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God deliver him now if he wants to. For he said, 'I am God's Son.'" The bandits who were crucified with Jesus also taunted him in the same way. From noon on, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. And about 3 o'clock, Jesus cried with a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of the bystanders heard it, they said, this man is calling for Elijah. At once one of them ran and got a sponge, filled it with sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to Jesus to drink. But the others said, wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him. Then Jesus cried out again with a loud voice and breathed his last. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who was also a disciple of Jesus. Joseph went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. And Pilate ordered the body to be given to Joseph. So Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a clean linen cloth and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn in the rock. Joseph then rolled a great stone to the door of the tomb and went away. Today's service has now ended. Let's leave this room in silence, and when it comes time, let us rejoice with greatness of the baptism.